Two of the most composed players in professional golf just came within inches of each other on the wrong side of calm, and tour officials are now scrambling to contain what happened before a single ball was struck in the final round. This is not a sponsor event photo opportunity gone wrong. This is not a caddy miscommunication. This is the world #1 and the reigning two-time major champion, both of them standing in a tunnel that leads to the first tee, voices raised, with 3 tour officials physically stepping between them before it escalated past the point of no return. And 47 players in the field watched the fallout ripple through the locker room before they even put on their shoes. Honestly, I think what detonated between Scottie Scheffler and Xander Schauffele in that tunnel reveals something the PGA Tour has been desperate to hide, that the pressure inside this locker room right now is not being managed, it is being ignored. Is Scheffler right to finally break, or has the weight of carrying this tour on his back finally bent the best player in the world? Drop it in the comments right now. And if you want the inside story on what is actually fracturing inside the PGA Tour's most important relationships, subscribe. Because what happened in that tunnel is the beginning, not the end.
To understand what broke in that tunnel, you need to understand the specific pressure system that has been building inside the PGA Tour for the last 4 months. The Tour's new signature event framework, the restructured scheduling model that concentrates elite fields into fewer, bigger tournaments, created an invisible hierarchy among players who publicly pretend to be equals. On paper, every player with a tour card is competing for the same trophies. In reality, the signature event structure decided who matters to the tour's business model and who does not, and it did that without a clean, transparent, player-wide vote. The players who benefited from that hierarchy, the top names automatically included in every signature field, received something that players just outside that tier did not. They received security. They received sponsor FaceTime. They received the television slots that drive endorsement value. They received the platform the tour built on everyone's collective performance. The players who fell just outside that guaranteed tier received something else entirely. They received a system that required them to perform at a level the included players were never asked to meet, just to earn the access the top names got automatically. The PGA Tour survived the LIV Golf War. It survived defections, lawsuits, Saudi money, and 2 years of the most hostile external pressure professional sports had seen since the AFL-NFL merger. It survived all of that. But the crack that opened inside that tunnel before the final round is not an external threat. It is internal. And internal fractures do not heal the way external ones do. They deepen. What set the tunnel confrontation in motion was not one event. It was the accumulation of 4 months of the same unresolved tension, playing out week after week in event after event, between 2 players who represent entirely different relationships with the tour's new power structure. Scottie Scheffler is inside the guaranteed tier. He has been there since before the structure existed. His name sells the product. His presence fills the field. The tour's business model is built in meaningful part around the assumption that Scheffler shows up and competes. Xander Schauffele is the 2024 Open champion and the 2024 PGA champion. He won 2 majors in a single calendar year, a feat only 7 players in the history of the sport have accomplished. And yet, he has watched the tour's framework treat his wins as justification for inclusion, rather than as evidence that the framework itself is the wrong measure. That distinction is what turned a handshake into a confrontation. And what those officials had to separate was not 2 players who lost their tempers. It was 2 players who finally ran out of patience.
Xander Schauffele is the 2024 Open champion and 2024 PGA champion, back-to-back major victories in the same calendar year. He is precise, technically immaculate, and, before this moment, someone who has never made headlines for anything that happened off the course. He is not a political player. He does not sit on advisory councils. He does not give long interviews about the business structure of professional golf. He plays, he wins, he goes home. Which makes what he said in response to Scheffler in that tunnel significantly more important than anything a more vocal player could have said. Because Schauffele is not making noise for attention. Schauffele is making noise because something actually broke. The unspoken contract between the PGA Tour and its top performers was never written down. It did not need to be. It was understood. You deliver elite performance. You build the television numbers. You give the sponsors something to attach their names to. And in return, the tour builds a structure that rewards that performance transparently, consistently, and fairly. One that does not require you to navigate political relationships with officials just to get the access your results already earned. That contract is now in pieces. Schauffele won 2 majors in 2024. 2. The scheduling conflict that triggered his tunnel conflict, a conflict that affected his preparation for the final round, was not an accident. It was the downstream consequence of a tour calendar restructured around signature event priorities, where the logistical needs of featured players in the biggest events created a secondary scheduling pressure on everything around them. Schauffele was not in the signature field for that particular week. His preparation slot got compressed.
his practice round access got limited, and the tour's operational response was, by his account, inadequate. 2 major championships, inadequate operational support, because the framework decided in advance which players the week was built around. Here is the question that nobody in the commissioner's office wants to answer on record. If Xander Schauffele, a player who won more major championships in 2024 than anyone alive, is not automatically guaranteed the full operational support the tour offers its signature event participants, what exactly does performance earn you inside the structure? What is the point of winning if the infrastructure still treats you as secondary to a framework that was set before the season began? Now here is the part nobody is talking about. The scheduling conflict that compressed Schauffele's final round preparation was not a one-week anomaly. It was the 4th time in this season that a player ranked inside the world's top 15 had a documented preparation issue tied directly to the signature event calendar's logistical footprint. The tour knows this. The Player Advisory Council has been briefed on it. The word used in that briefing, according to sources familiar with the meeting, was manageable. 4 incidents, top 15 players. The word they used was manageable. Schauffele does not use that word. He uses the word unacceptable. And he used it loudly, specifically, in a tunnel, in front of a world number 1 who told him to be quiet. 4 incidents, top 15, manageable. That is not operations management. That is a tour telling its most valuable performers that their inconvenience has been categorized and filed. The reaction from players who witnessed the Scheffler-Schauffele exchange was not primarily about the volume of the confrontation. It was about the specific content. Because Schauffele named the incident, he named the week, he named the operational failure by its actual description. Not a vague complaint about the schedule, but a specific, documented, repeated pattern of preparation being compromised for players outside the signature event guaranteed tier. When Scheffler told him to stop, he was not wrong that the tunnel was the wrong place. But Schauffele's response, the thing that sent the officials into motion, was a single question directed back at Scheffler. Where exactly is the right place? Because the advisory council got a briefing, the commissioner's office filed the incidents as manageable, the press conferences produce careful statements about player-first structures, and the preparation slots keep getting compressed for the players who, by every measure the sport has ever used to define greatness, have earned the right to be treated like they matter. Where is the right place? That question has no clean answer, and every player standing in that tunnel knew it.
The timing of this confrontation could not be more damaging for the tour's public positioning. The US Open is 8 weeks away. Augusta National is already paying attention to the temperature inside the PGA Tour locker room, because Augusta National's ability to host the sport's most prestigious major depends on that locker room presenting a unified, professional front to the world's sports media. A public tunnel confrontation between 2 major champions, with tour officials scrambling to separate them, is the kind of headline Augusta's leadership notices. The last time 2 top 10 players had a documented public confrontation that required official intervention, it was 1994. A generation ago. 3 decades of professional golf produced no moment that required tour officials to physically position themselves between elite players before a competitive round. That streak just ended, in a tunnel, 8 weeks before the US Open. The tour's operational response to the incident, an immediate statement describing it as a minor misunderstanding between 2 passionate competitors, lasted approximately 4 hours before players with first-hand knowledge of what happened started giving their own accounts to people they trust. Minor misunderstanding. That is not what 4 witnesses described. The tour knows the statement will not hold. They issued it anyway because the alternative, acknowledging that 2 of the sport's most decorated active players reached a confrontation point over documented, repeated operational failures the advisory council was briefed on and filed as manageable, is a far more damaging admission than a statement that gets walked back quietly. What happens at the US Open is now the next inflection point. Scheffler and Schauffele in the same field, the same media center, the same pre-tournament interview obligations. Someone in that press room will ask the question, and the answer, or the very careful non-answer, will tell you everything about whether the tunnel changed anything, or whether it simply added pressure to a structure that was already showing cracks before anyone raised their voice. 8 weeks, 1 press conference, 1 moment where the carefully managed narrative either holds or it does not. The tour is hoping it holds. The players in that tunnel are not so sure. Step back from the tunnel. Step back from Scheffler and Schauffele. Step back from the officials who scrambled. Step back from the statement about minor misunderstanding. Step back from the advisory council briefing that used the word manageable. Look at the pattern. The PGA Tour spent 3 years building its post-live identity around a single repeatable claim. We are a player-first institution. Every commissioner statement, every policy announcement, every press conference response to every question about the tour's structural evolution included some version of that claim. Player-first, player-driven, player-governed. And then watch what Player First actually produced. It produced a signature event framework that created a guaranteed access tier without a full player vote. It produced a scheduling calendar that repeatedly compressed preparation windows for top 15 players who fell outside the signature guaranteed list. It produced an advisory council briefing, not a vote, a briefing on documented operational failures affecting major champions. It filed those failures as manageable. It issued a statement about a tunnel confrontation between 2 of the sport's most important active players and called it a minor misunderstanding. That is what player first means in practice, not in the press conferences, in the tunnel. The players built this sport. The suits are filing it. This is not about a scheduling conflict. This is not about a tunnel argument between two competitors who will shake hands next week and act like it never happened. This is about whether the PGA Tour, the institution that claimed the moral high ground against LIV Golf by calling itself a meritocracy, a player-first structure, a sport run for the people who play it, is actually building that thing, or whether it is building a more profitable television product that happens to use those players as its content, managed through a framework that concentrates power and pretends the people inside it had a meaningful voice. One of those institutions deserves the loyalty it received through the LIV War. The other one does not. Is the PGA Tour a player-first institution, or is it a business that has learned to use player-first language to manage the people it depends on? And here is the real question. After everything Scheffler, Schauffele, and every other player who stayed loyal gave this sport, do they deserve better than what is happening right now? Drop your answer, right now, because this matters. The Tour has a short window to answer that question with actions instead of statements. That window is closing. Here is what happens next. Scheffler and Schauffele will be in the same field at the US Open. They will sit in the same media center. They will walk past each other in the same tunnel. A different tunnel, a different course, but the same unresolved question hanging between them. Someone will ask, someone always asks, and the answer will either be the careful, managed player-first language the Tour has been relying on for 4 years, or it will be something honest. The most important active players in professional golf drew a line in a tunnel this week. That line is now part of the story. And the Tour's next move, not the statement, the actual structural response, will determine whether Scheffler and Schauffele were the loudest voices or just the first ones. If you want the inside story on what happens when they walk into that US Open press room and somebody asks the question that breaks the managed silence, subscribe, because this story has not found its ending yet. This is not over.
Scottie Scheffler is the 2024 Masters champion, the reigning PGA Tour Player of the Year, the man who won 9 times in a single PGA Tour season, a number that belongs in a different era of professional golf. He is measured, controlled, and by every public account, the most mentally disciplined player in the game right now. He is not someone who loses composure in public, which is exactly why what happened in that tunnel carries the weight that it does. He snapped, and the people who saw it know what it means. According to sources with direct knowledge of what happened, multiple players and at least one tour official with first-hand account of the confrontation, Scheffler initiated the exchange, not Schauffele, Scheffler. The world number one walked into a tunnel conversation that had already started, heard something specific, and responded in a way that immediately escalated the temperature of the room. What he responded to was a comment Schauffele made, not to Scheffler directly, but in a group conversation among players that Scheffler was close enough to hear, about the tour's handling of a scheduling conflict that had directly affected Schauffele's preparation for the final round. Schauffele's comment by multiple accounts was pointed, specific, and publicly critical of a decision that both of these players know was made above the player level. Scheffler's response was not to agree. His response was to tell Schauffele, directly, in terms that left no ambiguity about his position, that airing grievances in a tunnel before a final round was the wrong moment, the wrong place, and the wrong way to handle it. That public criticism of tour decisions in a competitive environment does not solve the problem, it becomes the problem. That the players who have the most leverage in this sport are the ones least served by letting it look like the locker room is fractured. Imagine carrying the #1 ranking in professional golf for 18 consecutive months. Imagine being the player every sponsor calls first, the name every television deal is built around, the person whose presence in a field changes the value of the entire event. Imagine absorbing every expectation the tour places on the idea of what professional golf looks like at its best. And then imagine watching a fellow player, a fellow major champion, publicly vent that frustration in a tunnel in front of tour officials before the most important round of the week. Scheffler was not wrong that the timing was catastrophic, but here is the part of this that complicates the narrative the tour would prefer everyone to accept. Scheffler's instinct to protect the image of the locker room, to contain the damage, to push the frustration behind closed doors, is the same instinct the tour has been counting on for 4 years. It is the instinct that kept multiple top players quiet through the LIV War. It is the instinct that filled press conference rooms with measured, professional, carefully worded support for a tour structure those same players privately questioned. The tour built its survival strategy around players like Scheffler being willing to absorb the tension and not let it show. You absorbed the tension, you said the right things, you showed up every week and competed at a level that gave the tour something to market. You protected the room when protecting the room served everyone. And now the framework that came out the other side of all that protection, the structure that was supposed to reward your loyalty, is creating exactly the kind of locker room fracture you spent 4 years preventing. How long are you supposed to keep absorbing it? That is the question underneath the tunnel confrontation. Not who said what, not who raised their voice first. The question is what these players are actually being protected from, and whether the thing they were told they were protecting was worth the cost. Was Scheffler right to shut Schauffele down in that tunnel, or did he just use his ranking to silence a legitimate grievance from a fellow major champion? And here is what I actually want to know. Does a 2-time major winner have the right to publicly criticize the tour's decisions, or does that privilege still belong only to the #1 player? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.
Schauffele did not respond the way tour officials hoped he would. He did not walk it back. He did not absorb it quietly. And what he said next is what sent the officials into full scramble mode.
The last name you would expect to publicly defend the tour's position after a confrontation like this is Rory McIlroy. Not because McIlroy is a commissioner loyalist, his record on this is complicated and well documented, but because McIlroy has personal experience with exactly this type of frustration. He has been the player publicly carrying the tour's narrative through every difficult moment of the last 4 years. He knows what it costs. He knows the weight of it. If you won 2 majors in a calendar year and the tour's logistics still treated you as secondary to a preset framework, would you stay quiet or would you say something, even in the wrong place at the wrong time? And more importantly, does winning 2 majors in 1 year give you the right to break from the code of silence the locker room runs on? Drop it below. Be honest. And yet, McIlroy looked at the Scheffler-Schauffele confrontation and, according to sources familiar with his private comments, sided with Scheffler's instinct. Not with the tour's framework, not with the commissioner's operational record. With Scheffler's read that public confrontation, even justified public confrontation, serves the wrong interest at the wrong moment. McIlroy is not wrong about the tactical reality. Public fractures inside the locker room do not pressure the tour into faster structural change. They give the tour's communications office a narrative to work with. The story becomes the confrontation, not the 4 documented preparation incidents. The story becomes Scheffler and Schauffele's relationship, not the framework that created the conditions for it. The story becomes what happened in the tunnel, not what has been happening every week for 4 months. The tour wins every time the players fight each other in public, every single time. But here is where even McIlroy's tactical logic cannot hold the line. Because Schauffele's question, where is the right place, is one McIlroy has been asking internally for years. He has sat in advisory councils. He has given the careful press conference statements. He has been the human bridge between the boardroom and the locker room, absorbing the tension, translating the frustration into language the commissioner's office can manage. And the preparation incidents kept happening. The last time a generation of PGA Tour players agreed to absorb their frustration privately and trust the institution to fix the structural problems on its own timeline, it was 2021. By 2022, Live Golf existed. By 2023, multiple former major champions were gone. By 2024, the tour was negotiating a framework with the same entity it had spent 2 years publicly vilifying. The lesson of that sequence is not that quiet loyalty is rewarded. The lesson is that quiet loyalty gets managed. And managed means filed. And filed means nothing changes until something breaks publicly enough that ignoring it becomes more costly than fixing it. Schauffele may have picked the wrong tunnel and the wrong moment, but he may have picked exactly the right level of noise.